Hi, welcome to the Crypto Republic. Before we dive in, if you're serious about staying ahead in this once-in-a-lifetime financial shift, make sure you like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to the Crypto Republic. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. What a week. I don't even know where to start with this one because it feels like we've been hit with an inflection point, not just for crypto, but for money itself. Over the past few days, we've heard the kind of statements that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, one of the most conservative institutions on earth, now says crypto is inevitable. At the same time, BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, is quietly tokenizing the financial system while the Federal Reserve is tiptoeing around what looks like another round of quantitative easing, just with a new name and a cleaner packaging. So today I want to connect the dots, the IMF, BlackRock, and the Fed, and show you how the entire global financial establishment is preparing for a digital reset, whether they admit it or not. Because the truth is, we are watching the old system bend under its own weight. And as history shows us, when an empire's money starts to fail, the shift that follows rewrites everything. Let's start with the IMF, the institution that once warned governments to regulate crypto before it destabilizes the system. Now their own managing director says countries must accept reality. Fiat money is moving digital. That's not me saying it. That's the head of the IMF on stage admitting that millions of crypto believers have known for years. Developments in digital assets, both backed and unbacked, are happening with exponential speed. Fiat money is going digital. This isn't a speech from a blockchain conference. This is the heart of the global financial establishment conceding defeat. It's the same tone the Vatican had when Galileo proved that Earth revolved around the sun. Reluctant acknowledgement after years of denial. What we're witnessing here is psychological shift from resistance to acceptance. And that shift doesn't happen in isolation. When the IMF starts saying digital money is the future, it gives governments political cover to follow. It signals it's safe to move now. The IMF isn't leading innovation, they're legitimizing it. And that's a massive difference, because when the gatekeeper opens the gate, everyone else floods through. Now let's move to BlackRock, because this is where theory turns into action. Larry Fink, a man who controls $10 trillion in assets, said just last week, the next wave of opportunity is tokenizing everything. Let that sink in. Not some things, everything. He compared it to the transition from paper files to computers. If the 1980s digitized information, the 2020s are digitizing ownership. What does that mean in practice? It means bonds, stocks, real estate, commodities are being recreated on blockchain infrastructure. Every share, every loan, every ounce of gold could exist as a token, tradable 24/7, borderless, programmable. To the average person, that might sound abstract, but think about it this way. In 1995, the internet made information accessible to everyone. 2025, tokenization will make wealth accessible to everyone. BlackRock knows this, and they're not just predicting it, they're engineering it. They've already tested tokenized funds, and they're working with partners on permissioned blockchain that marry regulation with blockchain transparency. In other words, the world's biggest gatekeeper is now becoming the architecture of the next financial system. It's the same pattern we see with the printing press, with railroads, and electricity. At first they fight it, then they fund it, then they own it. Now let's turn to the Federal Reserve, because while everyone's watching inflation numbers, the Fed's quietly performing what looks suspiciously like a controlled pivot. Last week, Jerome Powell hinted that the Fed may stop reducing the balance sheet in the coming months. Translation, quantitative easing. It's effectively over. And if you know your history, you know what's coming next. Whenever the Fed says it's ending quantitative easing, it's using code for we're preparing to expand it again. You don't have to take my word for it. Look back to 2019. The Fed said it was just stabilizing liquidity. 3 months later, repo markets exploded. And within a year, we were knee-deep in emergency QE. It's the same movie, different decade. The Fed is once again boxed in by its own policy, high debt, slowing growth, and a fragile bond market. And when the world's largest economy sneezes, global liquidity catches the cold. So what do? They ease quietly. They talk about technical adjustments or balance sheets, normalization. But under the hood, they're injecting capital. And this is where it all connects, because that liquidity, that digital money, will eventually flow into tokenized assets. The Fed provides the water, BlackRock builds the pipes. Now, when you line up these three events, the IMF admitting crypto is inevitable, BlackRock tokenizing everything, and the Fed hinting at renewed easing, you start to see the bigger picture. This isn't coincidence. This is coordination through circumstance, a convergence of necessity. The old money system is like a century-old building. You can patch the walls, repaint the rooms, but eventually the foundation starts to crack. Debt is the crack, inflation is the mold, and the digital transition is the inevitable demolition and rebuild. The IMF is saying, prepare for the rebuild. BlackRock is saying, we're designing the blueprint. The Fed is saying, we'll fund the construction. That's not a conspiracy. That's macroeconomics in motion. And just like the 2008 crisis, when Wall Street emerged stronger while Main Street struggled, this next phase could decide who controls the future of money, the people or the institutions. History never repeats, but it rhymes loudly. 1944, the world gathered in Bretton Woods to design a new financial order. The U.S. dollar became the reserve currency backed by gold. The system lasted until 1971, when Nixon cut the gold link. Overnight, we became faith-based, backed by confidence instead of metal. Today, we're living through the next rhyme, the shift from faith-based money to code-based money. Instead of trusting central banks, the next generation will trust math, consensus, and open ledgers. We've seen this movie before. The printing press broke the monopoly of the church on information. Blockchain is breaking the monopoly of central banks on value. Each revolution started small, was ridiculed, and then reshaped civilization. That's where we are now. And when the IMF, BlackRock, and the Fed start aligning, even accidentally, it's not the end of crypto. It's the beginning of crypto becoming the system itself. So where do we go from here? First, expect acceleration. Digital currencies, both private and government-backed, are going mainstream. CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, will be rolled out under the banner of efficiency and inclusion. Meanwhile, tokenized funds and digital assets will quietly integrate into your brokerage account, your retirement fund, and even your mortgage. Second, expect consolidation. Just like the early internet, most projects will die, but the survivors will define the next 2 decades of finance. Third, expect confusion, because every revolution starts with chaos. The transition from horses to cars didn't just change transportation, it changed cities, oil markets, and entire empires. This one will do the same to money. Now, let me say this clearly. They don't want retail investors to benefit from this shift early. That's why the market shakes people out, through fear, regulation, or manipulation, because when the dust settles, they want control of the rails. But here's the good news. If you understand the pattern, you can position yourself ahead of it. You don't need to time the market. You just need to understand the direction of history, and history is going digital. Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's been a volatile ride. We've seen liquidations, fear, narratives flip overnight. But zoom out. The IMF just said crypto is inevitable. BlackRock just confirmed the tokenization era has begun. And the Fed, whether they call it QE or not, is quietly preparing to reliquify the system. That's not the end of the story. That's just a prologue of the next chapter. Because for the first time since the invention of money itself, the architecture of value is being rebuilt in real time. Not behind closed doors, but on open ledgers. So stay informed, stay disciplined, and stay early. Because as we've seen time and time again, the future doesn't ask for permission, it just arrives. This opened your eyes. Smash that like button, ring the bell, leave a comment with your thoughts. Turn on notifications, and most importantly, subscribe to the Crypto Republic, bringing you the truth about XRP, global banking, and the wealth transfer already unfolding. Don't just watch history happen. Stay informed, stay ahead, stay in the Republic.